Hey, thank you everybody for coming. This is an experiment with Facebook Live. I appreciate everybody at the farm sale who's organizing it this year. Avi Borgen, who helped arrange it, and all the CEO and all the very many people who are organizing it, and who the gentleman. What's your name?
Ari Rossman.
Ari Rossman, who set up the Facebook Live feed, which is great. The topic tonight is officially Skype and Halacha, but we're going to start with a little bit of hashkafa first. You call it hashkafa, a little light hashkafa, and that's just a simple concept that technology, and this is, I'm not saying anything particularly new or smart here, but technology changes quickly. There's Moore's law that, I don't know if it still applies, but it used to apply, that hardware or computer power doubles every year. Certainly social media and various other media changes extremely quickly. 10 years ago, almost nobody had heard of Facebook, and now it's huge. Blogs used to be huge. There used to be celebrity blogs. This is Blog Week at the farm sale. Blogs are not what they used to be. They're not so huge anymore. Blogs are not quoted in the Wall Street Journal as something, some big deal anymore. Some new. It's just a blog. No, email list used to be the big thing. Nobody really. They still exist, but who cares? And this poses a challenge. The challenge of changing technology. Let's take a step back though. The Gemara Shabbos says, "Asida isha sheteled b'chol yom." In the times of Mashiach, a woman's going to give birth every day. Now, whenever I think of that, I think of the joke about New York. In New York, every 30 seconds, a guy gets hit by a car. Poor guy. So the woman who gives birth every day, poor woman. So the Maharsha says, no, it's not a woman the same woman is giving birth every day. It's that the pace of life will speed. The pace of impregnation and gestation will speed, so that women will give birth more quickly. And in a small community, you'll have women giving birth every day, which nowadays doesn't happen. In a big community, it does. But basically, the Maharsha says in the times of Mashiach, everything will happen more quickly. And that's what we see today. Everything is happening more quickly. What used to take a change in technology, you'd have maybe one a decade, one every few decades. Now we have one a week, one a month. So I'd like to start out by talking about a change in technology that happened a long time ago, back when technology changed very slowly. And my point is going to be that halacha does not keep up with technology. And that should not bother you, should not worry you. That's actually a good thing. There's a political philosopher, Edmund Burke, who's like kind of the father of conservative political philosophy. And one of his ideas is that the reason you should be conservative and things should go slowly is because quick change destabilizes society. There's much more to it than that. He was opposed to the French Revolution because it totally destabilized, created chaos, people died left and right. He was not in favor of that revolution, the American Revolution he was in favor of, because quick change destabilizes society. And there are people who would like to apply this to halacha also, to Judaism as well, that quick change in the Jewish community destabilizes the community. And we have a Masorah that we're holding, we continue generation after generation. If things change too quickly, there's a risk that Chalila, the Masorah, will be broken and we won't pass it on to our kids. There was this atheist Jewish philosopher, I forget his name, he didn't believe in anything. But he said he was against intermarriage for the simple reason that there have been Jews in his lineage for centuries and centuries. He doesn't want to be the last generation. He doesn't know what he's passing on, but he's got to pass it on. So we believe in something, and we were very concerned about passing that on. But there's much more to halacha than just don't change too quickly. There are ideas, there are principles, there's a philosophy of life involved in halacha. But that Burkean idea, there's something to it. We don't want to change too quickly, and if halacha lags behind technology, that's okay. Now, of course, you have a question in halacha, you ask your rabbi. And your rabbi is going to do his best job to give you an answer, and it might not be a good answer. It might be the best job that he has, because it takes a while for the poskim to wrap their brains around it. So I'll give you an example. Umbrellas. Umbrellas have been around for a long time, but they became popular in the late 1700s in Europe. And the Noda Yehuda walked around in Prague and saw people carrying umbrellas on Shabbos. And he said, "Oy vey, what are you doing? That's asur passively deraisa." So he shriek gewalt and he got people to stop carrying umbrellas on Shabbos.
bona or because of carrying?
Well, a minute. Well, it's a good question. It's a good question. No, not carrying. Not carrying. I guess there was an error from Prague. I don't know. I assume there was some maybe it was in the courtyard or whatever it was. Carrying wasn't the issue. The issue was bona, building. As we'll see in a minute. And around the same time, the Birkei Yosef quotes from David Pardo, a big Sephardi Gadol at the time. He also Paskin. He wrote a commentary on Tosefta, the Chassid David, and on the genius. He also said it's also you're not allowed to. There were some Rabbanim, largely lower level Rabbanim, who were saying, they didn't analyze them. They said, I think it's mutter to open an umbrella, carry it around on Shabbos in an Erev. But those two big poskim said no. Chai Adam, so that was Yehuda's Tshuva 1773. Chai Adam in 1809, he published his Sefer where he says it's also to carry and open an umbrella. And after that, basically, it became standard. Nobody carried an umbrella. Fast forward a few years.
Was it Ohel, not Bona? Ohel.
Yeah.
Problem with Ohel.
So a few years, and they asked the question, is it really usher? So the Chasam Sofer has a tshuva from 1813, where he discusses all the possible questions. Is it Bona? Is it Ohel? And he has many different reasons where he thinks it's mutter. It's mutter to open an umbrella and carry it on Shabbos. But he said, no, Yehuda said it's usher. I cannot go against the Noda of Yehuda. So the Chasam Sofer himself says, all I can allow you to do is ask a Gentile to open it for you if you need an umbrella. Even though I thought it was mutter. And there are other post-game to Tiferes Yisrael. So Tiferes Yisrael on the Mishnayos. He has a commentary on Mishnayos at the beginning of Moed. If you haven't seen it before, look in his introduction to Moed. Many, many pages. Brilliant, very important. So his introduction to Shabbos, which is that introduction to Moed, it's called Kalkelos HaShabbos, where he goes through every Melach and talks about what does it mean, how do you apply, very interesting stuff. He has a long section on umbrellas, where he concludes it's mutter. He thinks it's mutter to open an umbrella on Shabbos. But the Noda of Yehuda said no, and nobody does it, so he's not going to allow it. And fast forward to today. It's just accepted that you're not allowed to do it. Interesting case, the Machane Chaim, so Rabbi Chaim Sofer, not related, who was a student of the Chasam Sofer, was asked this question. There was a doctor on Shabbos, had to go visit a patient. There's no rush, but it's because she had to get there sometime in the night to check on the patient. If he didn't get there, there was no rush. If there was a rush, they would have said, just go. Don't ask, just go. But he had to get there at night. It was pouring rain. Should he open an umbrella and take it? Or should he drive a horse and a carriage? Both are usher. So the Machane Chaim was a student of the Chasam Sofer. Says he goes through his Rebbe's tshuva, the Chasam Sofer tshuva. He said, disagree with all of it. I really think it's usher, possibly deraisa, to open an umbrella, but I can't disagree with my Rebbe. So he said, well, what should you do? So driving a carriage is for sure derabanan. It's not a car, it's a horse and buggy. Opening the umbrella, he thinks, he agrees with Noda Yehuda, might be usher deraisa. So what does he do? So he said, ask a Nokri to open it and carry it with you, so that way he refused to make the choice. Because you can't, so what I'm trying to emphasize here is that halacha is not just what do the texts say. There's a history to halacha, and there are personalities involved, and it changes over time, and you can't ignore history. Once everybody thinks something is usher, to say it's mutter then is a big deal. Now, technically, any posek can disagree with any other posek, but really, you have to have a little humility, and you have to understand who you are in relation to the past. And even the Chasam Sofer said, I'm not the Noda of Yehuda, I can't disagree. Chazon Ish, many years later, so he disagrees with Noda of Yehuda. He thinks Noda of Yehuda. So he gives two reasons why he thinks you're not allowed to open an umbrella on Shabbos. The Chazon Ish was a very creative, innovative thinker. So the Chazon Ish, he says, number one, maybe you're fixing, it's a tikkun kli, you're fixing the umbrella by opening it, which is very difficult to understand. You're fixing it. It's made to open and close. But the Chazon Ish has a unique opinion on that. And the second thing, he says, look, everybody assumes it's usher to permit that is pares together. You're just going to break the whole chain. We have a history. You can't just erase our history. I found that fascinating but enlightening, because halacha is not just about books. There's a process to it, and you got to follow the process. And not everybody has an opinion. Who has an opinion is really entitled to an opinion. There's I think in the early 1600s, there was some war going on in Europe, and the Tzemach Tzedek, not Lubavitch, Menachem Mendel Krachmal was a posek. he was asked his shiloh. So in the middle of war, people are dying left and right. Nebuch is terrible. So a man's wife, Nebuch, dies. He's a widower. His father-in-law's wife, apparently his second marriage. Also, his father-in-law was nifter also. So he wanted to marry his father-in-law's widow. Keep it all in the family, right? They all knew each other, spent Shabbos together. I guess they weren't so far in age. So it wasn't his mother-in-law. It was his father-in-law's second wife. Father-in-law passed away. The wife passed away. Middle of war. No Rav was around to ask. So they asked the local Talmud Chacham who was learning in Kollel. And the local Talmud Chacham said, yeah, you can, it's okay. So they got married. After the war, the Tzemach Tzedek found out about it, and he was livid. Machlok is exactly whether that marriage is allowed. He held it's mutter lechatchila, it's asur lechatchila, mutter b'diavad. Meaning you're not allowed to conduct that marriage. But if they're married, so no, you don't have to divorce, it's okay. Because it's a big machlokas. So you think, okay, so they're married, right? They're married. You don't force him to get divorced. It was the middle of war. They asked the Talmud Chacham. He said, no, you didn't ask a Rav who was capable of paskening on that shaila. You violated, that's considered mazid, intentional, and therefore he forced him to get divorced. Wow. Wow. He said you have to be a balei hara hamefursomim. You have to be famous. To pasken on a difficult question like that, you don't ask the local guy in the kollel. You don't ask the local Rav. You have to ask a posek. It's quoted in Pischei Tshuva, in Yoreh Deah, in Simon Sadi Test. So that's quoted la halacha, that are difficult questions. If you don't ask someone who's qualified, a real posek, you didn't ask anybody, and you're amazing. Wow. Okay. Second example, electricity. And I'm picking this on purpose because a lot of people say, the rabbis just don't get electricity. Sheker v'chazov. That's so untrue. In around early 1900s, maybe 1903, so there was a Torah journal published in New York. There actually was Torah in New York before World War II, believe it or not. They published a Torah journal. They had an article from the Aruch HaShulchan about electricity on Shabbos. Are you allowed to flick a switch and turn on an electric light bulb? I think that was a shiloh. I've never seen it. Who has a Torah journal from 1903? I don't have it. So the Aruch HaShulchan is very, very lenient. He says flipping a switch is not directly doing a malacha, it's grama. You flip the switch, the activity happens over there, you're only indirectly causing it. And he's not the only one who said that. There's Rabbi Pesach Frank, the Rav of Yerushalayim, so he also held that way. If you flip a switch, it's grama, which has huge implications. Nobody paskins like that Aruch HaShulchan. Nobody paskins like that Rabbi Pesach Frank. Because so many poskim have completely and utterly disagreed with that. But even more to the point, in 1903, the Aruch HaShulchan's explanation of electricity as fire going through the wires, so that same, I don't know if it's the same journal or the next issue, they had a rabbi who said, I talked to an engineer, that's not what electricity is. In 1903, they were getting advice from engineers about what this thing called electricity is. Certainly, in the 1930s and 1940s, in Yerushalayim, which was not really a first world city at that time, it was really a third world place there. So last time I was in there, I'll just tell you a brief story. Last time I was in Yerushalayim, I was completely jet lagged. My body was totally not following any normal clock. So Shabbos morning, I woke up like really early in the morning. I was staying in a hotel not far from the old city. I said, I'll catch the first minyan at the Kosel. I heard, I thought it was Rabbi Gil Nebenzahl down in there, so maybe I could catch Rabbi Gil Nebenzahl. So apparently I missed the first minyan, I got to the second minyan, I don't know what. So I'm walking back from davening Shachos and Musaf at the Kotel. And there's this old lady who cannot walk on her own being led by this little Yemenite kid who sees me and quickly runs away because he doesn't have to do it anymore. So she leans on me and I walk her to, she's going to a friend's house for Kiddush. And so to keep me interested, she's telling me all these interesting stories. She grew up in New York, she went to Columbia. Not long after the 6-Day War, she and her husband said, let's make Aliyah, move to the old city. In those days, I guess it was cheap, I don't know. They could afford the real estate. They have a home that almost looks over the Kotel. I mean, it's literally steps away from the Kotel. She says she could not believe how difficult life was. They were starving. They couldn't drink. There was no water at times. It was such a difficult life. All the kids moved away because it was so difficult to live in Yerushalayim in those days. And that was the old city. Rav Shlomo Zalman, I think he lived in the new city, but even still, it was very difficult. They didn't go to college. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach never went to college. But in the 30s and 40s, he wrote about electricity. He consulted with all the greats. He talks about how he consulted with professors, and he wrote letters to them, and then he consulted with the Chazon Ish, and they had letters back and forth. I don't know if he ever actually met the Chazon Ish. Both in those times, going to Bnei Brak and Yerushalayim was a big deal. But their letters he exchanged with the Chazon Ish. They knew about electricity, and Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach has a whole sefer, Me'orei Ha'ish, on the subject. Probably available on the Sfarim sale. It was recently reprinted. Fabulous. It was edited by an engineer who's a Talmud Chacham, so incredible footnotes, and in this end is a section written by the engineer who's a Talmud Chacham. In the 1970s, there were two institutes established on Torah and technology in Eretz Yisrael. You had Somet, and then you had its competing one, I don't remember what it's called. What?
Groma. By the Began?
I don't know. I don't remember the name right now. But two engineers, Talmidei Chachamim, huge Talmidei Chachamim, open institutes to explore what's allowed and what's not allowed with the advice of the postgame. You know, they went to Shlomo Zalman day in and day out. And they went to the other postgame as well. Where Vosner never went to college, but was well known. I have friends who are Rabbanim in major cities in Europe who knew when you had a technology, Shaila, you go to Rav Vosner because he knows what's going on. Zatzal, I mean, he was nifter a few years ago, but until very recently. 2 years ago? Okay, so I'm just rambling at this point. But electricity, so Rav Kook has a tshuva on electricity, which was not published until the 70s. So it kind of missed, it's a brilliant tshuva, but it missed all the excitement and nobody knew about it until the 70s. And then, I don't know if he discovered it, but the person to make it most famous is Rav Eliezer Melamed. In his Pnei Halacha on Shabbos, the English edition is probably available at the Sfarim sale. So I want to get invited back next year. So he talks about, Rav Kook holds, electricity is literally Aish. And he says, not Aish fire. I know there's no fire going through the wires, but the definition of Aish is not fire that we see in our fireplace. It's more expansive. And he has an expanded definition of Aish that includes electricity correctly defined. So he holds, and using any electricity is an Isser D'Oraisa. Now, like I said, this tshuva missed all the excitement. It's in the 40s and the 50s, and I believe what the standard view is, Rav Henkin laid down, was L'chatchila we are machmir, that using electricity is D'Oraisa. But in cases of need, we're more makel because there are more makel opinions and maybe it's the Rabbanan. So we're more makel when the need comes. So Rav Nachum Rabinovich, who had a relationship with Rav Henkin towards the end of Rav Henkin's life, and Nachum Rabinovich was Baruch Hashem alive today, she's long and well. So when he paskins for his Talmidim, who are soldiers in the Israeli army, he uses Rav Henkin's guidelines that in a case of need, we can be more makel that it's the Rabbanan, but otherwise assume it's D'Oraisa. I think that's a standard. But I hear, like on the blogs, on the Facebook stuff, people saying electricity, maybe it's not us, or the rabbis don't really know. It's insane after all these years of engineers, literally, rabbis who went to engineering school and studied physics and have PhDs. It's just totally divorced from reality to say that some of these rabbis just don't know anything about electricity. But interestingly enough, the Chazon Ish had a very strict opinion on electricity. He held his bonnet, and it's a deraisa to complete a switch, complete a circuit, or to close or open a circuit. His opinion has weight, even though many people disagreed with him, including Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. His opinion has a lot of weight because he was first and because he's a Chazon Ish, and he has such weighty impact, and everybody is scared of the Chazon Ish. To be a posik, you have to be fearless, but you also have to have humility. And how you balance that, I have no idea. I'm not a posik. That's probably one of the many reasons I'm not. But a posik also has humility, and to disagree with the Chazon Ish is possible, but it's a big deal, and you don't want to do that unless you have to. Okay, so the official title of this lecture was Skype and Halacha. Let's talk about Skype. So what is Skype? Skype is just an example. Skype, you can communicate from your phone have a video phone call or video call with other people. It's also the same thing as FaceTime. We're doing Facebook Live now. It's essentially largely the same thing. Facebook Live is just one way. Skype and FaceTime is a two-way conversation. It's a geweldige thing. It's a wonderful thing. My daughter was in Eretz Israel. She went to my sister's house, got the Wi-Fi, and we Skyped, and I got to see my daughter, who was away for a year, so it was a wonderful thing. That raised a shiloh. Raised a big shiloh. I asked for Shlomo Aviner, but we'll get to that. Hold on. What are you allowed to do in Skype? So it's not uncommon, sad, but it happens. Women tend to outlive the men, and so you have an older woman who has never said Havdalah in her life, and now she's what, 85, 90, and she doesn't have a husband around to say Havdalah for her. So it's a shiloh whether a woman can say Havdalah, because the question is the bracha Borim Ori Ha'esh. Can a woman say that bracha? It's a shiloh. Generally Ashkenazim are strict, and a woman doesn't say Havdalah unless push comes to shove, and she has to say Havdalah. So a few weeks ago I was away for Shabbos at a simcha, and my wife stayed home for a different simcha, for the other part of the simcha. So I wasn't there, so what'd she do for Havdalah? My wife and my daughter, they went to my next door neighbor. He said Havdalah. No big deal. But not everybody has a next door neighbor. And not everybody's comfortable doing that. So what should a woman do who can't say Havdalah for herself, even for psychological reasons? You're 85, you never said Havdalah in your life. It's hard to, I'm not going to say teach someone a new trick, but it's hard for someone psychologically to do that. If you think about it, it would bring many people to tears.
Why shouldn't a woman say Borim Ori Ha'esh?
So, it's a good question. Why shouldn't a woman say Borim Ori Ha'esh? Let's table that for after. I've already gone on way too many tangents, and I don't want to keep people here too long. So many people. So the question was asked: can a woman or can a son call his mother, his elderly mother, while he says Havdalah, and say Havdalah on the phone, and have an older woman be say Havdalah on the phone? Skype would be even better. Although, so what are the questions? Number one, can you be Yosei a mitzvah through the phone? And through Skype, can you say Borim Ori Ha'esh? There's a candle, looking at my fingernails, can I say Borim Ori Ha'esh? So this is a general question of can you be Yosei mitzvahs on the phone? And I'm about to completely contradict everything I just said. So the earlier poskim, when they talk about this, they say, yeah, pretty much. Rav Kook actually has a tshuva. Can you be Yosei a mitzvah on the phone? He says everything except for shofar. Because shofar, you have to actually hear the shofar. You can't even hear an echo. You can't be disturbed in any way. But everything else, you could be Yosei.
Minyan?
I'm sorry?
Minyan?
Can you count for a minyan?
Virtually. You can't, right?
You can't, but it's a separate question, but you're correct. No, you can't count for a minyan on the phone. Through the internet, through Skype. Sweet Pesach Frank, the Chazon Ish, Rav Moshe, they all say you can be Yosei at least rabbinic mitzvahs through the phone. But all the later poskim, from the later part of the second, not all, but generally speaking, the thrust of a poskim, the later half of the 20th century, is you can't. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Rabbi Yosef, the Sis Eliezer, the Minchas Yitzchak, Rav Moshe Sternbach, they generally say you can't be Yosei a mitzvah over the phone. Why? Because you're not actually hearing the voice. You're hearing an electronic reproduction of the voice. So you can't be Yosei mitzvah with an electronic reproduction. The Minchas Elazar was asked this question, pre-war. Phonograph, a record. Anyone here remember what records are? I see two people over there who might remember. So my kids have no idea what a record is. I mean, I'm sure they must have learned about it in history. But when I grew up, there were records. So you put a record on, and he was asked, you hear chazanos. Chazanos on a record, big deal. They used to sell lots of records. So can you say amen to a bracha on a record? And he said, no. You're just hearing a reproduction of something that someone once said. That's not a bracha.
But
and the same, even if it's live. Oh, so you ask me if it's live. You ask me a good question. Hold on one moment. We'll get to that right now, because that's an excellent question. But even if it's live, I'm not going to get... Your question is even better than what I'm about to say. Even if it's live, it's still an electronic reproduction. So to be Yosei a mitzvah, you're not actually hearing the mitzvah being done. So therefore, I saw Rav Haskell Lupstein quotes Rav Soloveitchik as saying that you can be Yosei Megillah through a microphone, And Moshe Sternbach has a tshuva where he says you could be Yotzei Kriyas HaTorah, the Torah reading, through a microphone. Why? Because you don't actually have to hear the person's voice, you have to hear the reading. So through the microphone, you're hearing the reading, just not the actual person's voice. Okay? Sorry? Not on Shabbos. During the week. During the week. A fast day. You know. So to your question before, can you answer Amen to an electronic reproduction? And if I could add a little to your question, if I could be presumptuous, there's a Gemara in Sukkah that says the shul in Alexandria was so big, people didn't hear all the brachas, so they'd raise a flag when it was time for people to say Amen. So clearly, as long as you know, or the way Tosfos says, if you know what bracha is being said, and you know when to say Amen, when the bracha ends, then you can say Amen. And that's what they did in the shul in Alexandria. So if you hear a live broadcast, you can say Amen. In theory, you know the bracha is being said. You know when it ends. You know what bracha it is. You can say Amen. And that's what Moshe Feinstein said. If you hear bracha on the telephone live, if you hear it on Facebook Live, if I say a bracha now, so according to Moshe Feinstein, you can say Amen. You actually have to say Amen. But not everybody agrees with that. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, again, says, in Alexandria, they were in the place where the bracha was being said. They knew it was being said. They knew what bracha was being said. It was just too big. They couldn't hear. So that is okay. If you're there, if you're not even there, says Shlomo Zalman, if you're not in the same place, you don't have to say Amen, and you shouldn't say Amen. It's just like hearing a record playing. It's on the radio. It's on the telephone. It's on Facebook Live. It's on Skype. It's not a real bracha that you're hearing. It's just an electronic reproduction. So don't say Amen. Rabbi Gil says it like this. It says, if you received a telegram, I don't even remember telegrams. Telegrams are once a thing. You receive the telegram saying at 11 a.m. on this day, I'm going to say a bracha, so you wait for 11 a.m. and you say Amen. So you know what bracha is being said, you know what bracha is being said. You're not there. You don't actually hear it, you just hear an electronic reproduction. So of course you don't say Amen. You don't actually hear the bracha. Again, Moshe Feinstein said you should say Amen. You have to say Amen. If it's live. If it's not live, for sure not. So what did we see? So we just saw that the thrust of halacha at one generation was to allow being Yotzei mitzvahs electronically, and then it switched. So what happened? What did I just say? I just said you can't. It's complicated. There's no simple formula. You got to balance it all together. The weight of the personalities of the poskim, how strongly did they feel? The Noda Yehuda felt very strongly it was also to open an umbrella. How strongly do you feel? And it's really up to the poskim involved. Now, if you ask look, I can give you my opinion on any subject that you want. I got opinions galore. Do my opinions count for anything? No. If you follow my opinion over Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, you're a fool. So who's opposed? If the answer isn't obvious to you, then ask your rabbi. He should know. Okay, so here's the shayla that I was going to talk to you about. So my daughter was in Eretz Yisrael. I Skyped with her. So the Gemara in Bracha says, if you don't see your friend in 30 days and you see him again, it brings you joy, you say Shechayanu. If you don't see them in a year, you say Baruch Mechayim Esim. You say Mechayim Esim. With shame and malchus. So the Rashba has this question. We think it's just nowadays. Even in the times of the Rashba, there was such a thing as a pen pal, where they would write letters to each other. Nowadays, email, Facebook friends.
Twitter.
Facebook friends, the equivalent that existed in the Rashba's time. And he wanted to know, if you see a friend you've never seen before, ever in your life, you just exchanged letters, and you were so happy to see them, do you say a Shechayanu? And he said, Rashba says, well, let's take a look at the Gemara. The Gemara says, if you haven't seen your friend in 30 days, or if you haven't seen your friend in a year, and now you see them, then you say the bracha. If you've never seen the friend before, that's not in the Gemara. There's no bracha for that. So he said, no, you don't say bracha. And that's how Shulchan Aruch passes. If you've never seen your friend before, so if you go to TweetUp is like a meetup for friends on Twitter. You go to TweetUp, all you've done is tweet it to each other. So according to the Rashba and the Shulchan Aruch, you don't say a Shechayanu, because you've never met before. It's only when you meet again. Think about that for a minute. Think about what it says about virtual friendship and real friendship. Something there. Mr. Shem will come back to that. Minchas Elazar, Munkach Rebbe, was a Rebbe in Munkach. He was known as a Charif. He had very strong opinions, which he expressed in very strong words. And apparently there was a retired Sephardic Rav in Yerushalayim, Reb Shlomo Alfandri, who was the Sephardic equivalent of the Minchas Elazar, who was also spreading his opinions widely on very controversial topics with strong words. And they exchanged letters. They became very, very friendly. So the Minchas Elazar came to Eretz Yisrael for the first time. He went straight to Yerushalayim. He saw Reb Shlomo Alfandri and all the Rabbanim were around, and he said, Shechiyanu v'kiyiman. He said the bracha. And everybody's like, what? What? So if you've ever seen this, there's a series of Svarim called Mikroi Kodesh about Tzvi Pesach Frank's house in Yerushalayim, where every other person in Yerushalayim was a Gadol Hador. And they used to come in on Yom Tovim to spend time with Tzvi Pesach Frank, and they would just talk about the most interesting topics, the most interesting shilas around. So eventually someone wrote it up. It's called Mikroi Kodesh, and they bold every name of everybody involved. And you sit, you're like, wow, to be in that house. Apparently, before you got in, they had to check your credentials, make sure you're a Gadol Hador before they let you in. So they asked Reb Tzvi, so there's a tshuva from Reb Tzvi Pesach Frank to Reb Yitzhak Nissen, the Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel, about the Minchas Elazar saying a bracha of Shechenu when it's just, that was a hak. In Yerushalayim in those days, that was a hak. He said a Shechenu, how could he do it? So Reb Tzvi Pesach Frank says, if you look at the Gemara carefully, like the Rashba said, the Gemara talks about if you see a friend again after 30 days or again after a year, if you've never seen the friend before, the Gemara doesn't talk about it. So maybe you do say bracha. So that's his limud chus, his attempt to justify or rationalize the Minchas Elazar's Shechiyanu on saying Reb Shlomo Alfandri. I don't recommend using it. So if you go to tweet up the first time, I recommend not saying a Shechiyanu. If you go to Facebook, I don't know what it's called in Facebook. People actually meet in real life, but maybe they never do. I don't know. So you first time you don't say a Shechiyanu. Second time, if you really feel a lot of joy, you should. But interesting caveat. There's a halacha. The Rabbi Gil quotes a halacha which is widely accepted that say Mechayim Mesim if you haven't seen a friend in a year because it's as if they're resurrected from the dead. So you haven't heard heads or tails from them in a year. You haven't really thought about them, not in any real way. So it's as if they're resurrected. But if you did hear news about them, if you had a little, oh, this kid got engaged, oh, he made a bar mitzvah, you heard some news, or you got a letter, so then you don't say Mechayim Mesim. Just a Shechiyan. You don't say it. You don't say Mechayim Mesim. If you hear news about your friend within the year. Mishnah Berurah takes it one step further, says if you've heard news about your friend within 30 days, you don't say a Shechiyanu either. Which would mean, if you've emailed them, if you've read their tweets, read their Facebook posts, if you've chatted with them, if you've IM'd them, if you've text messaged them, if you've anything, any connection whatsoever, something's beeping here, any connection whatsoever, so you don't say, according to the Mishnah Berurah, Shechiyanu. So to tweet up, of course you don't say Shechiyanu, because you've tweeted with everybody. However, Rabbi Yosef says, I don't understand, that doesn't make sense. He thinks it's wrong. The whole reason not to say Mechayim Mesim is because as if they're resurrected from the dead. The whole reason to say Shechiyanu is because you're ecstatic to see your friend. The fact that you heard news about it shouldn't matter whatsoever. And other poskim say, I saw somewhere, I don't remember where, he thinks it's just a typo in the Mishnah Berurah, and really that little note was supposed to refer to Mechayim Mesim and not to Shechiyanu. So the later poskim are just confused about this Mishnah Berurah. So la halacha. So I asked Reb Shlomo Aviner the following. I had Skyped with my daughter when she was in Eretz Yisrael. I talked with her on a cell phone. So when I get to, I'm sorry to embarrass my daughter. So when I went to visit her at one point during the year. So when I see her, should I say a Shechiyanu or not? Because I've Skyped with her. So Shlomo Aviner responded, say a Shechiyanu. If you're happy to see your daughter, say a Shechiyanu. Skype is not real. Skype is just much less than a real life interaction. Avi, you and I, we've emailed, right? It's much better to see you. I'm so happy to see you in person. I can't say Shechiyanu, but I'm happy to see you in person. It's much different. Sorry, you had a question.
Yeah, I was curious if, let's say Skyping would count. Let's say you don't Skype you don't see each other for 30 days, and you Skype after 40 days. Do you make a Shechiyanu on the Skype?
So even on that, so Rabbi Yosef would ask the question. Let's say you see your best friend, and he's on he rises and he's on a TV program, and he's interviewed on TV. You haven't seen him. Do you say Shechianu on seeing your friend on TV? Not that he's saying, well, you can watch TV. The radios have never permitted watching TV. Don't get me wrong. But if you see that, or he used to give a shear on satellite TV. I remember in Brooklyn, everybody used to pack into the show, multiple shows at some point to hear it. So let's say you hadn't seen his satellite TV shear in a month, and then you go again, and you're so happy. Ooh, chacham avadia, do you say Shechianu? So he said no. He said no. Seeing someone on TV, hearing them on the radio, seeing them on the phone, and I assume, I believe it's the same on Skype. It's just not the same as seeing them in person. And so you don't say Shechianu on seeing someone on Skype, and seeing them on Skype doesn't ruin your Shechianu. So when you see them in person, you can say a Shechianu. Mechayim Mesim, you can't. After a year, even if you Skyped and emailed, so that ruins the Mechayim Mesim. So let's take a step back for a minute and just learn a little hashkafa from this halacha. I'm a little older than most of you here. Not everybody, most of you. I can tell you for sure, 100%, friendships, community is in person. It's not on Facebook. It's not on email. I used to have a whole community on my website, on my blog, in the comment section. And I don't dislike any of them. I enjoyed that, but it cannot compare to my neighbors and the people I see in shul every day, and the real life family, because the interactions in person are just that much stronger. Does technology change that? I don't think it ever can. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned that way. Maybe you're millennials. I don't know. Maybe you're younger than millennials at this point. So machlok, you're stuffing millennials. My kids joke around. My oldest was born in 1995, and then my youngest was in 2006. So most people, the first ending point of millennials is 1995. So my daughter is Vadai millennial, and all the other kids are Suffolk millennials. So they don't even know what generation they belong in. They're so confused in the world. Most of you are probably Suffolk millennials, I would guess, if you're below the age of 21. So you say, whatever, it doesn't really matter. No, I'm Vadai Gen X. Vadai. But so any questions? Yes.
I think it's important also to point out the idea of, like, you use the word ecstatic, because otherwise the idea that you have lots of friends and you're happy to see them, let's say you go to a wedding and there's a load of people you haven't seen in over 30 days. You're going to go around to everyone you see Shefi and make a Shefi. We don't hear, at least I haven't heard of it.
So that's a good point. Let me tell you something even funny. You'll appreciate this. So what the gentleman just said is you have to have real joy. You don't just say Shechianu on every person. And when you see a lot of people, maybe you should just say one Shechianu and not, if you go to a wedding, you see all your buddies from high school. So you should only make one Shechianu and not on everybody. But even more than that. So the minute, who says Shechianu really? No, who does that?
Not even when you see two Gedolim together?
So sometimes, when you see two Gedolim together, I don't know if Shechianu is the right bracha. The bracha of Shecholak Mechachmaso Livsar Badam. So that's when you say on Gedolei Torah. But even when you see your best friend, I haven't seen, some of my friends, you get to my age and you don't see your friends too often. Some of my closest friends. So the Ramah already points out that this bracha Shechianu is a rishus. It's an option. You're allowed to say the bracha. It's not a chova. You're not obligated to say it. Which is why probably the poskim say most people don't say it nowadays. The Nimukei Orei Chaim. Who wrote the Nimukei Orei Chaim? Anybody? The Minchas Elazar wrote it. So the Minchas Elazar himself writes the minig is not to say Shechianu. But he said Shechianu, right? So he was so overjoyed. So fine. So even though you don't normally say Shechianu, even if you're right and you're safe, you don't say Shechianu. So sometimes you can really be overjoyed to see a friend. And then the right thing to do is maybe you don't say the Shem Malchus, but to say Shechianu, to thank Hashem that you had this opportunity once again to see this great friend that makes you so happy. And not all my friends make me equally happy, but some of them really do bring you a lot of joy to see. And at that point in time, so when Yosef and Yaakov Avinu were reunited, they were saying Shema, right? Why did they say Shema? Because what do you do when you when you're reunited, and you thank Hashem for that. And that's what Shechianu really is about. It's saying Shema, just like Yaakov and Yosef. It's thanking Hashem for bringing you to this time where you could be reunited with your great friends. And I think that's a wonderful thing to do. Maybe now with Shem and Malchus, depending on how you feel. So thank you very much. I've kept you all long, so I appreciate everybody who came. Have a good evening. Go to the farm still, buy some books.
Ending live video.